So the first thing we're going to start off with for getting this ready is we're going to actually take off our front passenger side wheel. Now some people have said that just by tilting it in really far they can get it done, but for the sake of this I'm just going to do the way AEM says to do it, and we're going to take it off. Okay, once you got your tire off, which I have to say, I'm kind of out of breath now. My dealership must have thought it was funny to super glue my rim to my hub. But so what you're looking at when you got it all out, what you have to do is you have to take out this bolt here, this plastic screw here, this plastic screw over here, this retainer clip up here, this screw down here, and you've got two retainer screws along the bottom. And once you get those out, we can continue. Okay, so I had a little bit of difficulties getting this thing to fully release. So just undo the things I told you, except that bolt. Don't undo that bolt. That one right there. Don't do that, because it just takes off your bumper. Now you can take off your bumper if you want, but you don't need to. So right now what we're looking at is the washer bottle. We need to undo that bolt. And we apparently need to undo the bolt up there, which it might actually be easier if we take off our bumper to do that, because that is in a freaking stupid location. So let's undo those bolts and carry on. Now remember, before starting any project, undo the negative battery side on your car with a 10mm wrench. What this does is prevent you from blowing any fuses, and it also helps by cycling your ECU after you've installed your intake. Now before you undo those bolts that I mentioned, I'm kind of silly, you want to undo that plug right there. That's your pump. And you want to undo the plug on the bottom. That's your level sensor. Just unplug those before you do your bolts. And this is what I'm replacing with the AEM intake. This is my custom fabbed up K&N short ram intake. Now, a problem I ran into with the washer bottle is, unless you have freakishly small hands, you have to get between your frame, and the washer bottle to undo one of the bolts. So if somebody else has like some sort of trick or tip, obviously share it. If you can do a video, that'd be even great. But otherwise, I'm having to remove my headlamp just to get at that one bolt to get your washer bottle out. Alright, now this is about half an hour later. I'm going to say this right now. If I ever meet the guy who designed where this washer bottle goes, I am going to kick him in the nuts. This is the stupidest design ever. I had to undo all of the bolts along here, undo this bolt, pull the headlight out, which you have to undo this and this, and you just stick your hand behind and give it a nice shove. Then you come along here and you undo that bolt that I earlier told you not to undo, and don't undo that one. That one, you don't undo that. That you actually don't undo, and you just give it a nice firm tug along. Then, with your incredibly skinny arms and an extension on your ratchet, using a 10mm socket, undo the bolt that is located down, all the way down there, right there. And finally you get your washer bottle down. Now, I'm at the point now where I've got it down, but I still have fluid in my bottle because I don't know how to drain the thing. And I didn't want it dumping all over the place where I was working. So, what you do, according to AEM, you take your flat blade screwdriver, you lightly pry up on your pump. And it should release. Oh, there we go. Now, make sure you don't do what I just did, which is the filter screen just popped out. You're gonna have to wash that up before we stick it back in. I got a little bit of fluid all over the place from the line, and there's your pump. So if you ever need to replace this, it's going to be in a much better location later on, because obviously you're going to use the new bottle. And since we unplugged those cords, I can now bring this all the way out And I don't have a spare washer fluid, so I'm going to use a no name, not allowed to say on the internet because they're not paying me, bottle, and I'm going to take the fluid from there and pour it into there, and then we're going to store it for later use so it doesn't end up in some cat's stomach or something. Alright, now we've got the washer bottle is completely out. We've disconnected the hardware at the pump from the line, and we've got the pump sitting inside the bottle. We've got the sender in the bottle as well, and we've got the cap on, which this I was kind of hoping they'd have like a little flap too, but it just kind of loosely sits on there. We're actually going to start taking the intake apart. Now you have to undo, if you've got a manual transmission, you have to undo this one as well as this one, but as you can see mine's already got a filter on it. But if you this doesn't exist if you've got an automatic transmission. I'll get into a little bit more of that later. And you disconnect that from the block because it's not going to be used anymore. And then you're going to come down. Now this is all stock, ignore my filter for now. You're going to have to undo those two screws there to release the piping here to put the thing in. Now if you still have your stock intake put in, you'll have a bolt here, you'll have a bolt here, and you'll have another bolt down there, and you'll have to undo those and take your original filter housing out. You'll also have your ram scoop across here. Your ram scoop just comes out, but you don't actually have to take it out in order to do this modification. You just have to take this, the original block out, undo this clamp here, and it'll all just pull out, and you pull it out on an angle towards your fender, and it'll all pop out. So I'm going to go ahead and do that, and we'll continue on. At this point I'm ready to start installing the cold air intake itself. There's your turbo inlet that we've just exposed. And you're going to start with this nice little rubber piece that AEM supplies. And we're going to stick it up in there. Now you don't want to tighten anything in yet. Not a damn thing, because there might be some minor adjustments that need to be made. Or you might need to rearrange how your screw is set up so you can access it with a screwdriver. My blow-off valve is getting in the way, and so is the actuator. So I'm going to have to play with that when I get everything else set in. So here's your actual intake. We're set up here, and we're going to place it in, hopefully, in one go, which I can't do apparently. So we'll try putting it in this way. Nope, got to put it on step by step. So we will go and do that. AEM has included a little rubber bushing here. So once you got all that kind of sort of lined up, you need to give it a twist so this lines up there. Now again, you don't want to tighten anything up because there will be little minor fit and finishes that need to be done. This is an opportunity. Let's go check this out. You see this little rubber bumper pad that came with it. Notice that there isn't a whole lot of clearance here. The point of this rubber bumper pad is to sit right in there to protect your intake from getting all scuffed up. So let's go ahead, install the little rubber bumper pad, make sure everything is lined up, that your clamps are where you can adjust them, and once we get that done, we'll look at installing the filter. So once you got your filter in, you'll notice that it's not all that low, really, to be honest. You'd have to drive through one monster puddle in order to suck water into your intake. But either way, once you got everything set up, you'll notice the rubber pad is there, and it's right where you need it to be to protect your intake as it bounces around in your hood. You just go along and you tighten everything up I'll show you guys where I put everything. In there. Right between there is how I got that to line up to screw those in tight. You tighten them up with about 15 or 16 foot-pounds of torque. This is what I was talking about. I said earlier that I'd come back to these breather hoses, and well, I'm going to stay true to my word. If you have an automatic Genesis coupe, AEM, despite when I called them and asked if they provided everything I needed, and I even told them I had an automatic when I didn't. If you have an automatic transmission, you have to get a plug for this. If you went to a dealership and they installed your intake and you do not have this plugged, you are going to damage your engine. Almost guaranteed. Something will go wrong because your air is not filtered and it will suck air through here. So get a plug, plug this up, make sure that it is completely covered. If all of the Genesis coupes have this breather, this large half-inch breather tube here, which connects to your crankcase. This is a perfect time to install a catch can, which I'll cover at a later date, because there is quite a bit of oil that